Today I have my Providence Community Library shirt on. Can't see the logo. I'm Miss Carla, and we're going to keep reading Love, Sugar Magic, A Dash of Trouble by Anna Mariano. Hope everyone is having a good week so far. The weather is beautiful outside today in Providence. I have not gone outside. I might go look in my backyard a little later, but I can see the beautiful sunlight coming in through the windows. It makes me very happy. I notice lots of animals, birds and squirrels and so forth running around the backyard, and I've seen plants growing up, and it is becoming a lovely springtime. All right, we are now on chapter 25, Seance. And I believe at the end of the last chapter, they tried to undo the spell that shrunk poor Brent. Did not work, and then in came 3 pairs of eyes peeking through the doorway. Let's see who that was. Hey, it's a party, said Alma. Nobody invited us, said Belen. Meow, said Senor Gato, leaping straight back onto the bed and settling into Leo's lap. He made a point of ignoring Brent and licking his front paws as if he had never been interested in pouncing on the small human in the first place. Close the door, Isabel told the twins. We have a situation. Hello. Belen approached the bed and held out one finger for Brent to shake. She turned to Leo. Were you going to warn us about the danger of those cookies? It wasn't the cookies. Leo dropped her head. I was going to tell you about those. Ask you, actually, but I got distracted. She leaned down to pull the Ziploc full of ginger snaps out from under her bed. Are these safe to eat? They didn't shrink Brent. They just made him love everyone. Those are the love bites? Isabel asked. As long as you set the recipe to work on a specific person, anyone else who eats the results won't have side effects. Isabel's shaky voice grew stronger as she returned to her role as know-it-all. And personally, I need all the sugar I can get. She grabbed a cookie from the bag and took a bite, chewing slowly and closing her eyes. The undoing spell didn't work, she explained to Alma and Belen. I don't know why. I'm afraid we're going to have to get Mama involved, so you two might want to stay away, keep out of trouble. That's all right, Alma shrugged. We knew Leo was cooking up a love spell, so we're already conspirators. Plus, we might be able to help. She and Belen edged their way onto the crowded bed, tucking their legs under them to fit. Remember, we can go over Mama's head. Do you think you can ask? Isabel's voice squeaked and her eyes pleaded. Is Abuela nearby? I'd like to talk to her. She's usually hanging around somewhere, Belen said, but I haven't seen her in the house today. Can you call her? We'll try to get a summoning going. Let's see, we'll need a candle. Marisol held one out, a short white tea light in a tin holder. And matches? Instead, Marisol produced the purple lighter. Thanks. Brent, do you mind moving out of the middle of the circle? That's sort of where the ghost is supposed to sit. Brent's wide-eyed confusion matched Leo's feelings perfectly. He scrambled over the comforter to hide behind Leo, who lifted him into her hand to hide her surprise. She didn't know Alma and Belen could summon ghosts the way people did in scary movies that Leo wasn't supposed to watch. Although she liked the idea of getting advice from her abuela, Leo couldn't help but shiver at the idea of a seance. She looked down at Brent. Do you want me to put you back in the dollhouse? There's no such thing as ghosts, Brent said, but he didn't sound entirely sure of himself. While Alma and Belen set the candle in the middle of the bed and whispered to each other, Leo deposited Brent onto the 3rd floor of the dollhouse, half wishing that she could hide with him and half excited to see the twins' special power up close. Alma adjusted the candle the tiniest bit to the right when Leo returned to her spot on the bed. Belen scoffed, moved the candle barely to the left, and lit it. Leo's lights went out, which by now she expected. Alma and Belen, sitting across from each other at the head and foot of the bed, reached to hold hands over the flame. Their shifting made the small candle wobble, and Leo hoped that she wasn't about to set her bedroom on fire. Just in case, she planned her route to grab Brent and Senor Gato and get out of the room. Leonora Elena, what are you dreaming? Aren't you going to say hello? Leo jumped. Sitting, no, actually standing in the center of the bed, her body from the waist down disappearing through the mattress, was Abuela. Small and wrinkled and hunched, she wore a purple dress and white sweater with a thin gold chain necklace, like she was dressed up for church. Her white hair was pulled back in a bun, and she would have looked as sweet as cotton candy if it weren't for her eyes, which had the force of black holes and were currently turned disapprovingly at Leo. Sorry, Abuela, Leo squeaked. Hello, it's good to see you. And it was. Leo had been small when Abuela died, but seeing her now felt familiar and happy, not like a scary movie at all. It was like when Leo's grandma Logroño called to video chat from Florida. Even though they were separated, Leo always felt glad to hear that her grandma loved her and to get to say that she loved her back. Plus, her laugh sounded just like Daddy's when Leo told jokes. Alma and Belen had dropped hands. Belen's eyes shone white like marbles. Well, you've all grown so much. Abuela's eyes turned softer as she looked around the circle, and Leo felt herself relax. I peek in, of course, but you're always changing so fast. Oh, well, you didn't call me here to hear about your growth spurts, I guess. What's going on, hijas? It wasn't until that last word that Leo recognized the strangest part about talking to her dead Abuela in her bedroom. Leo could understand her. Abuela, Leo said before her sisters could answer Abuela's question. You don't speak English. Abuela gave Leo a stern look. Leonora Elena, that was rude. I have had time to learn many things since you last saw me. Sorry. Leo hung her head. Poor Leo, Marisol snickered. She never learned to deal with you, Abuela. Leo, here's a tip. If she tries to give you a lecture, just cover your ears and stick out your tongue. That always works for me. Abuela's laugh was loud, and it moved like an earthquake through her whole body. The sound tickled the back of Leo's brain like the first notes of a familiar song. You were a little terror then, and I bet you're no better now, Marisol, mi sinvergüenza. Don't listen to her, Leonora. Abuela! Alma bounced a little on the bed like she had transformed into the excitable 7-year-old she had been when Abuela was alive. Don't you want to see what Leo did? She pointed straight at the dollhouse. Leo cringed. Without ever moving through space, Abuela suddenly stood right in front of the dollhouse and peered straight in through the third-floor windows. Leo heard a strangled squeak and felt sorry for Brent, who just a few minutes ago hadn't believed in ghosts. And who exactly are you? Abuela put her hands on her hips. Leo guessed that she was probably giving Brent a very powerful glare. I'm Brent. Abuela leaned even closer to the dollhouse. Then she turned and looked straight at Leo. Well, Leonora, this doesn't look good at all. Chapter 26, Abuela. Leo tried to give her Abuela the short version of how Brent had been turned into doll-sized Brent. She wanted to pass quickly over her many mistakes, and she also rushed for the sake of the twins, who were beginning to look noticeably strained from maintaining the seance. Alma's bouncing had gotten worse, a constant jiggling and fidgeting that made the candle flame wave dangerously, and Belen's face was shiny with sweat. The skin around her white eyes turned dark like she hadn't slept in weeks. Leo didn't know exactly how long they could keep Abuela here and visible, but it seemed to be wearing them out. No wonder they didn't do this for all the customers at the Dia de los Muertos festival. Passing voice messages was probably enough work. I thought it would be a pretty simple fix. Isabel took over the story with just a hint of pout in her voice after Leo recounted her failure. But the unraveling spell didn't work at all, and I'm not sure what else to do since, well, Mama hasn't exactly taught me individual spell reversal yet. Marisol snorted, and Isabel shot her meanest look. transforming into a stretched-out version of Abuela. Mama told you, Marisol said with a satisfied smile, that you didn't need any more encouragement to try complicated spells you weren't ready for. Settle, girls, Abuela chided when Isabel opened her mouth to respond to Marisol. Leonora, let me ask you something. Do you know why 15-year-olds have to be initiated into the family magic before they begin training in spellcraft? Leo shrugged and inspected her comforter. Alma and Belen aren't 15 yet. By a few months, you're right, but they had your mother's permission and guidance, and they went through the initiation ceremony as each girl must do before she could start practicing magic. Leo shrugged again. Many people in this world have magic, Abuela said, but they can use it in 100 different ways. Some people become curanderas, using their magic to heal the sick. Some become alchemists or wizards and pull on the threads of the universe. Some people carry a more subtle magic and never know what force leads them to dance a beautiful ballet or design dazzling skyscrapers. Your father's family has its share of latent magic, and he carries plenty of his own, though he doesn't know anything about it. It likes to hide your father's magic. Leo looked at her sisters. Except for Belen, who still stared straight ahead, they all looked surprised too, so it would seem Leo wasn't the only one who knew nothing about Daddy's magic. Many people know how to use brujeria to connect their magic to the world, using candles and herbs and faith and tradition, but what our family did, what your 5 times great-grandmother did, was find a way to understand her own magic, to make it grow and to share it with her daughters. It made her stronger, and it makes each of you stronger too. How? Leo asked. How did she do that? She became una bruja cocinera. Abuela winked at her, and she used her magic to unite her family. A kitchen witch, Isabel whispered. And for generations, our family has passed down our witchcraft, Abuela continued, each mother initiating her daughters into the family magic at 15. Though, of course, you broke tradition from the beginning, Leonora Elena. A 5th daughter. Leo opened her mouth to ask Abuela more about her birth and about her birth order magic, but Abuela shook her head and waggled a finger at Leo's face. The initiation ceremony is very important for a new bruja. During this ceremony, the initiate's magic joins with the family magic, the magic of her sisters, her ancestors, and her descendants. Abuela paused until Leo lifted her guilty eyes out of her lap and met her grandmother's gaze. The ceremony allows for other members of the family to combine their magic with the new bruja's magic, to work joint spells, lend strength, and even undo a spell cast by another family member. Before this joining, the new bruja's magic is more distinctly her own, and she alone can use or unravel it. You mean we can't help her? Leo has to undo the spell herself. Isabel covered her mouth with her hand. Abuela nodded. Leo's heart pounded. Isabel and Marisol stared. Alma and Belen fidgeted. From the dollhouse, a high-pitched groan broke the silence. I'm doomed, Brent moaned. Those were 2 short little chapters. The next chapter, 27, is called The Plan. Leo put a hand out to settle Alma, whose fidgeting had turned into an almost constant shaking. It was easier for Leo to worry about her sister than it was to face the pit of anxiety that spread in her stomach. She alone. Leo, working alone, had started this whole mess, and now she had to work alone to fix it. The worst part was, Leo had wanted this. She'd wanted to be the center of attention, wanted her sisters to stop pushing her aside and talking over her head. She'd wanted to use magic to make herself special and important. No wonder all her spells had gone so dramatically wrong. Are you all right? Leo asked Belen, whose skin was clammy when Leo patted her arm. Should I get you some water? Belen shook her head, but didn't speak. Girls. Abuela held out a hand, and Leo hesitated before reaching to take it. The ghost flesh was as solid as it looked, though it felt light and disconnected, as if Leo held a disembodied hand. I should leave before your sisters drain themselves, but I so enjoy seeing you all. Leonora Elena, if you want my advice, talk to your mother. She can help. And good luck. You can do this. Don't listen to that old dirty cat. Senor Gato, who had been slinking toward the dollhouse with his rear in the air, turned around and meowed sweetly. Abuela kissed each girl on the cheek and patted Alma and Belen on the head. Que bueno trabajo, hijas. Gracias. God bless. And she was gone. The candle flame sputtered and died, and Leo blinked in the light of her ceiling lamp. Girls, Mama's voice called from the living room. Where is everyone? There are still dirty dishes in the sink. Leo froze. In spite of Abuela's advice, Leo still couldn't imagine anything worse than the anger and disappointment Mama would have for Leo if she found out about all of this. You're not planning to tell her, are you? Marisol whispered. Leo shook her head, her eyes glued to the tea candle that was little more than a puddle in its tin casing by now. Mama would smell the candle smoke or the magic, and she would storm in here and figure everything out, and then she would never teach Leo to do magic, and Leo would never work in the bakery. She would have to get a job doing the most boring thing in the world, like taxes or writing the labels for soup cans. Leo didn't want to write the labels for soup cans for the rest of her life. Right, Marisol stood up. I wouldn't have been any help with the magic stuff, but I can keep Mama and Daddy busy while you work on it. Good luck, Cucaracha. There's the old hamster cage in my room if you need somewhere to keep your little friend. She slipped out of the room before Brent could get out more than an outraged yelp. Leo heard Mama, her footsteps clicking up the hall, stopped to ask Marisol what was going on. Isabel is a horrible brat, and I hate her, Marisol screamed in response, and I don't know why I even bother staying in this house when everyone would be happier if I just left. Maybe I'll drop out of school and run away to New York and make a living as a street magician. Mama found Marisol stomping back down the hall. Mama followed Marisol's stomping back down the hall, away from Leo's room. The soft tones of Mama trying to calm Marisol and the sharp tones of Marisol refusing to be calm continued, promising to keep attention away from Leo's room. If she hadn't known that it would ruin the act, Leo would have run down the hall to give Marisol a giant hug. Belen tried to stand and swayed a little with one hand propping her against the bed. Alma, who was still twitchy but more stable, offered her twin an arm. We're going to grab some ice cream, she said, smiling while chewing on her lip, and maybe more quesadillas. Or a cookie. Lots of cookies could be good. Do we have any more lemon bars? Belen perked up at the mention of food, so Alma towed her twin toward the door. I'm sorry we're not being more help, but you're worn out. Isabel shook her head. You already helped so much. And you heard Abuela. Anyway, Leo's on her own. Yeah. Alma reached up to flatten her already flat pink bangs. Leo, you've already done more complicated spells than Belen and I have. Don't worry, we know you can do it. Her fidgeting didn't make her look entirely trustworthy, but Leo was glad for the kind words anyway. Okay, little Leo, Isabel said once the room emptied out. Here we are again. Leo remembered sitting in the bakery office, looking up at Isabel and hearing for the first time about magic and sweetness and brujas. The beautiful blizzard spell Isabel had shared. Leo wondered if Isabel regretted ever telling her anything at all. Even though everything had gotten so messy, Leo didn't regret learning about magic. She only regretted not learning more, and now, hopefully, she would fix that. Leo took one deep breath and held it until her stomach stopped churning. So I need to make an unraveling spell, and I have to do it on my own, but I don't know how. I can help you with that. Mama won't let me practice them yet, but I did my own research on the theory of how it's done. Leo smiled. At least one sister understood Leo's sneaky magic learning. Isabel read over the honey jar recipe with Leo, explaining how each ingredient needed to be replaced with its magical opposite in order to make it a working undo spell. It was a tricky task. You had the right instincts with your first love potion, taking out the target so the spell would work more generally, but you also saw how a change like that could have unintended consequences. Leo nodded and gulped. There were so many different ingredients in the honey jar, If each one had a possibility of failing as badly as Leo's other experiments, maybe this reversal spell wasn't such a good idea. Brent had the same fear. I don't understand why you can't just tell Leo which ingredients to use for the process, he gulped, apparently not quite willing to use the word spell. Leo could still be the one to actually put it together, but why does she have to make up the whole thing? I just told you, unraveling spells are finicky. The spell that shrank you was her mind, her magic, her mistakes. No reversal spell I invented, or even one Mama or Abuela invented, would work perfectly. But what was the opposite of honey? Or a spider web? Leo felt like her brain was being over-kneaded until it was tough and flat and pummeled. How can I pick? Everything could be wrong. It's not about being right or wrong. Isabel's voice remained patient, even though her fingers kept tugging nervously at her ponytail. It's about making sense to you and your spell. If Leo hadn't been so grateful for her sister's help, she might have been terribly annoyed. Leo decided on molasses to be the base ingredient for her opposite spell. Molasses was sweet and thick and would create a jar with a consistency like the original spell, but it was dark instead of light, and man-made instead of natural, and it reminded Leo of winter instead of spring. Instead of a spider web, the spell would use a cut piece of the silk Leo had accidentally stolen from the cabinet, material made from insects, thin and shiny like a spider web, but coming from a protective cocoon instead of a misleading trap of a web. In place of candy hearts, Leo chose chocolate coins because of their association with luck. Leo felt like this spell needed all the luck it could get. Finally, she decided to use leaves from the giant oak trees in their yard to replace the lilac bonsai leaves. She wrote it down on a sheet of notebook paper. Leo's anti-shrinking jar spell. To grow a boy normal-sized. Ingredients. 1 glass jar. 1 faucet of running water for purification. Molasses, enough to fill the jar. Silk cloth. Lucky chocolate coins. Leaves from a giant oak tree. Isabel helped Leo sneak into the kitchen and gather her ingredients. Instead of using a candle, Leo washed the jar in the bathroom sink to get rid of the leftover honey and also to purify with water instead of fire. She blew into the jar, laid down the silk, poured the molasses, and dropped in the chocolate. She thought about freedom, about breaking down the old spell, about protecting Brent from all the out-of-control magic he'd had thrown at him. After consulting with Isabel, Leo also added a crumpled-up piece of leftover Love Bite ginger snap and a scrap of paper that Brent hesitantly wrote his name on with the smallest pencil Leo could find. This, Leo hoped, would erase the effects of the first love potion, if any were still lingering. There were only 2 steps left to the spell, both of which required leaving Leo's room. But a bad feeling made her pause. She was missing something. She felt sure something was wrong. You're nervous. It makes sense. But we don't have much time, Leo, so get out there. The sun had fully set, and the moon peeked through the window behind the dollhouse. Marisol had resorted to muffled sobbing in the living room, and both Mama and Daddy were focused on her supposed crisis, which Alma and Belen kept popping into Leo's room to report on. Brent had fallen into a restless nap on the doll bed, and Senor Gato had given up trying to pounce on the visitor, and resorted to hiding under the bed, watching the dollhouse, and meowing. The molasses jar sat on the floor in front of Leo's bed. Things were not quite normal, but Leo couldn't identify anything that should be making her feel so strongly that she was forgetting something. She only remembered when she turned her wandering gaze to her bookshelves. Can you wait here, please? She asked Isabel. And watch everything? I just need 5 minutes. Also, can I borrow your cell phone? Leo felt like an escaped prisoner as she crept across the hall to Isabel and Marisol's room, where the cell phone was plugged in and placed neatly on the edge of Isabel's carefully ordered desk. Leo woke it up, dialed the number ripped out of her notebook, and listened as it rang. Caroline answered her phone with a cautious, hello? It's me, Leo said. I'm calling from Isabel's phone. Leo! Caroline's voice morphed from soft to piercing. What is going on? You hung up without telling me anything. I'm sorry. Tears rose in the back of Leo's eyes. I'm really sorry. You know, Caroline said, cutting Leo off. You complain about your family not trusting you, about keeping secrets and lying, but from what I can tell, you're the biggest liar of all. Leo's heart sank. I I know, you're right, Caroline, but Isabel's helping me now. I asked her to help. Good, Caroline snapped. I told you to. Her breath huffed and crackled through the phone. Did did she find a solution? We found something I can try, Leo said, but her heart sank just thinking about the plan. I don't know if it will work, though, and I've messed everything up so badly so far, and Leo was afraid. She was afraid that she would never find a way to fix Brent. She was afraid of getting arrested, and of Mama being angry with her, and of her sisters growing up and learning magic without her. She was afraid that even if her unraveling spell worked perfectly, it was too late. She was afraid Caroline wouldn't want to be her friend anymore, no matter what happened. Hey, Caroline's voice came out softer after a long pause. Leo, it's okay. I'm sure you can figure it out. Leo shook her head, even though her friend couldn't see her. How could Caroline have any faith left in Leo after how horribly everything had gone? I shouldn't have called you a liar, and I know you can do this. Do you know why? Because you... Caroline interrupted herself with a laugh. You are the most talented witch I know. Leo sniffed. Because I'm the only witch you know, right? Caroline laughed some more. Leo decided that her friend had cracked under the pressure of the past few days. I'm sorry, Leo said again. I'm sorry for pulling you and Brent into this. Caroline sighed. I'm sorry for wanting to get pulled in. But you know what's better than an apology? A solution. Okay. Leo took a shaky breath. I'm going to go try the spell now. Wish me luck. Good luck, Leo, Caroline said. I really do believe in you. Leo hung up the phone, feeling better in spite of the tears in her eyes. The bad feeling of forgetting something had disappeared, and Leo remembered that Caroline had been a part of the original spell. Even if she couldn't be here helping with this opposite spell, at least she knew about it and was wishing Leo luck. That had to count for something. Leo replaced Isabel's phone and scurried down the hall toward the front door to get the final ingredient. Chapter 20. These last chapters are very short. I think we'll read chapter 28, which is only 4 more pages, and then we'll stop after that. This is called Unraveling. When Leo snuck out the front door, Marisol's tirade showed no sign of ending. Leo made it outside and left the door ajar while she tiptoed across the dark lawn, moisture from the ground seeping into her socks. The tree in the middle of the yard spread tall and wide, with a trunk as big as a refrigerator and branches that shaded most of the house. If there was ever an opposite of a bonsai tree, this towering oak was it. The leaves weren't changing colors yet. It usually took until almost Christmas for that. But Leo found a fallen leaf without too much trouble. She carried it inside, back to her room, where Isabel chatted with Brent, asking what his favorite classes were, science and English, and what he planned to do for Thanksgiving. Visit his dad and stepfamily in Dallas. There you are. Isabel smiled at Leo, and her voice held the same pleasant tone she had used to talk to Brent. But from the way she pressed her lips together and tugged at the hem of her blouse, Leo knew her sister was nervous. Did you get what you needed? Are you ready? I got it. Leo thought of the phone call with Caroline more than the leaf she clutched to her chest. Let's go. She dropped the oak leaf into the jar. Isabel plucked Brent out of the dollhouse and carried him to the bed. Have either of you ever had to swim in something sticky? Brent eyed the jar with a frown. Leo and Isabel shook their heads. Well, it's not fun. It feels horrible in your clothes. He had changed back into his pajamas, still damp, and he shivered a little in his bare feet. The sooner you're big, the sooner you can get home to your mom, Isabel reminded him. He nodded. This had better work. Amen, Leo thought, scrunching her eyes to send her prayer up faster. She tried to concentrate, to pour a little more magic into the molasses jar, to make it work. Everything counted on her doing the spell just right, and she was terrified. But then she remembered that Caroline believed in her. that Alma and Abuela believed in her, that Isabel and Marisol and Belen believed in her, or they wouldn't have been helping her out all night. And she managed a tiny smile and a nod, and Brent let go of her finger and cannonballed straight into the molasses mixture. After 2 full seconds, Leo reached in and fished Brent out by the back of his t-shirt, set him on the washcloth that Isabel had laid out, and licked the molasses off the tips of her fingers. Brent swiped the dark syrup out of his closed eyes and away from his lips. Isabel sat like a statue, not even breathing. Leo gulped. Why didn't it? With a noise like a firecracker, tiny Brent exploded up and out. The jar, which had been sitting just a few inches from him, rocketed away so hard it cracked against the wall, splitting into 2 pieces that dripped gooey molasses onto Leo's pillow. But the mess didn't bother Leo, because sitting in the middle of her bed, still covered with molasses and sputtering as he adjusted to the explosion, was Brent. Normal-sized Brent, in normal-sized Spider-Man pajamas, wiping a normal-sized bucketful of molasses out of his hair. That, he blinked at Leo through molasses sticky eyelashes, was highly unscientific. A giant grin spread across his face as he stretched his arms above his head and took stock of his back-to-normal body. I guess you really are a witch. Actually, said a voice from behind Leo, she's a bruja. Mama stood in the doorway, her face slowly shifting from worry to anger. Behind her, Daddy's face was stuck in total shock. Marisol hung back, giving a helpless shrug. Leo gulped. And this little bruja, Mama continued, has a lot of explaining to do. That is the end of chapter 28. The next chapter is 29, and it's called Bruja. And we will be reading that tomorrow. And I think, we will be finishing this book tomorrow. Good for us. And then the following day, we will start a new book. I hope you're enjoying it, and I hope everybody has a good day. Bye-bye.